Pokemon. It really needs no introduction. I love it. I have for a long time. The original Pokemon games, Red and Blue, actually hold a special place in my heart, as they really got me interested in programming and eventually video game design as a whole. These games are so jam-packed, full of fun details that even though they are such small games with so many flaws, I can revisit them anytime and have fun. While I've played Red and Blue a lot though, I've never played much of the enhanced version, Yellow.
Yellow was a special edition of the game with a massive number of changes, from bug fixes, new Pokemon sprites, different encounter locations, different trainer teams,
And of course, a whole new starter, Pikachu, that can't evolve. Also, it's just a Pikachu with no buffs or anything. Yeah, that's the main reason I play Red and Blue more than Yellow. It's been a long time since I last played Yellow, and I had to ask, has my opinion changed? Are all the extra changes in Yellow worth putting up with a yellow rat as your starter? I decided to do a Nuzlocke of the game to find out. I also did a Nuzlocke of Pokemon Blue right before to get a good idea of the changes, but the footage of that run is sadly lost. Oh well, I can still recount my experiences with it, and with the game as a whole. We start by naming ourselves, and naming our rival, something very appropriate, of course. We try and leave Pallet Town, but are stopped by Professor Oak, who warns us about the long grass. Then Oak proceeds to enable his game chart code to encounter a wild Pikachu, while Pokemon can't be found in Pallet Town, and Pikachus can't be found at all, and decides to catch it as a present for his butt. We head to the lab where Oak tries to give me an Eevee, but Butt snatches it, and we end up with the Pikachu, called Yella, which quickly proves its dominance by getting back-to-back critical hits on the Eevee. Nice job. Gen 1 Tangent. I'm going to go into a few Gen 1 tangents during the course of this video, because I find them fun. There's a lot to talk about with these games, and while I can't talk about everything, I can certainly talk about some of the fun things that are interesting. So, tangent number 1. Not only are critical hit rates determined differently to every other Pokemon game, but the damage crits deal is different too. Each Pokemon's critical hit rate is determined by the formula base speed divided by 512. So with a base speed of 64, you have a 1 in 8 chance to crit. The critical hit damage formula takes the level of the attacker into account. At level 5, the multiplier is about 1.5, whereas at level 100, it's about 2. So if you're playing competitive, it doesn't make too much of a difference, but for Nuzlocks, it can make a big deal. Before the Nuzlocke can officially begin, we have to run to Viridian City, grab Oak's parcel from the Pokemon, then run back to Pallet Town to deliver it. Oak gives us the Pokedex, Butts brags about being able to complete it, and I know that I will never even look at the thing. Brilliant piece of technology that it is. And with that, we set forth on our journey. We buy some Pokeballs from the mart and head to Route 1 for our first catch, and we get a Pidgey. Could have been a Rattata, which is actually kind of good, but hey, we can use it for dupes. Tangent number 2. Eradicate is a surprisingly good Pokemon. This is largely because Pure Normal is a fantastic type. Normal is arguably even better than Psychic in Gen 1, since Psychic types are checked by other Psychic types, but very few Pokemon actually resist normal attacks. Most normal types also have excellent coverage moves for these checks. Eradicate is particularly an early game beast because of getting Hyper Fang at level 16, which is an 80 base power normal attack, which is way too early for a move this good. So anyway, we struggle for a bit before we have to try and weaken it with Thundershock, and KO it in one hit. You know what? Pidgey sucks anyway. Let's just pretend I caught it, but I'll never use it. Deal? Cool. Route 23 is where you catch a Mankey in a typical playthrough, since it's one of the very few Pokemon that can fight Brock. Pikachu is even worse into Brock than Charmander is. Instead, we get a Rattata named Rat with 3 T's, which is fine. There are other Pokemon we can use for Brock, such as Nidoran on Route 2. In Yellow exclusively, Nidoran learns Double Kick pretty early, making it a decent Pokemon for the Brock fight. I call it Pidge, for no reason at all. Our last encounter before Brock is in Viridian Forest. Viridian Forest has seen a drastic change in Pokemon for Red and Blue. Weedle and Pikachu are completely removed from here, to keep it in line with the anime. Pidgey and Pidgeotto are included, for some reason, but the best encounter here is the most common, and that's Caterpie, which we catch and call it Margarine. Margarine is the only one we have that can take on Brock, which we wouldn't expect, but since Brock has 0 rock-type attacks, even in Yellow, it's very favourable for Butterfree to sweep. Brock's Pokemon haven't changed much since Red and Blue, but they are 2 levels lower with a level 10 Geodude and level 12 Onix. Onix also knows the move Bind, which is just a fun and fantastic move. In Gen 1, as you may know, Bind is part of a set of 4 trapping moves. These moves deal damage, then repeat for 2 to 5 turns, during which the target can't move. Gen 1 tangent number 3. Brock has 5 full heals per Pokemon. This is ridiculous overkill, especially since status at this point is super rare. I can only imagine the reason is to stop players cheesing the fight with poison sting poisons from Beedrill, or something like that. And tangent number 4, it's possible to skip Brock, for now at least. This only works in red and blue though, not yellow. The step-by-step guide is as follows. Open up the start menu, place your cursor over save. Walk up to the NPC who stops you leaving pewter, walk directly in front of them to trigger their dialogue. Close their dialogue with B, not A, and press start when the box closes. Save and reset. When you reload, you'll be taken through a glitchy walk animation. Return to where the NPC was. They should be gone. Walk to the next route at the topmost part of the path where the NPC was, and voila! Now you can go on with your merry way. You will have to fight Brock at some point in order to get to Victory Road. If you beat Giovanni, don't defeat Brock, then fight the rival on Route 23, you'll get some pretty fun glitchy effects that I've never actually tried. Maybe I should do it. Tangent 4.5. You could take this glitch even further to allow you to walk through walls indefinitely. I'm not kidding. You'll need a full team of 6, and your 6th Pokemon needs to be at level 8 with its 2nd move's PP being exactly 16, and its 3rd move's PP being exactly 36. Bulbasaur works the best for this. Do the Brock skip as before, but then walk right into the next route, then back into Pewter City. You should see the NPC reappear. You then talk to them from the right hand side, then view your party, and presto, you can now walk wherever you want. Doing this unlocks a ton of stuff for you to do, such as get both fossils by visiting Mount Moon from the other side, visit Cerulean Cave, and get Softlocks, or just go straight to the Elite Four. There are even challenge runs where players use glitches to beat the gyms in reverse order. Back to the Nuzlocke. Margarine clears Geodude without too much trouble thanks to its access to Confusion, which is a fantastic move at this point in the game, and Butterfree has excellent stats compared to Geodude and Onix. Onix proves to be quite a bit scarier, however, as it immediately goes for Bide, and I get a critical hit Confusion. This does about 60%, and this is where the crit calculation comes in. I have one turn to do something before I have to deal with a massive Bide attack, so I click Confusion, hoping it'll KO, and it comes up just short. Now I have a choice to make. Bide can either last 2 or 3 turns. If it's 3 turns, I can just KO it with a 3rd Confusion, but if it's 2, it'll go before Butterfree, since Bide has priority, and almost certainly KO it. So I have to gamble on a coin flip, or sacrifice a Pokemon to save Margarine. I decided to sacrifice Pidge to save Margarine. Butterfree is an excellent early game Pokemon, and I'll have other opportunities for Pokemon better than Nidoking, so sadly, we part ways early. Turns out that this Bide lasted 3 turns, so had I attacked, it would have been a deathless fight, but those are the decisions one has to make. Pidge falls to a beyond lethal Bide on the following turn, allowing Margarine to clutch the win without further risk. Brock gives up the terrible yet apparently lethal TM for Bide, and I'm just left speechless. How do we lose a Pokemon to Brock of all things? This is a harsh, cruel reminder that I'll have to be careful going forward. Nothing too eventful happens on Route 3. I want to save my encounter for a very particular Pokemon, the Magikarp at the end of the route, but I have to go through the grass to get around one of the trainers. On the very last tile, I encounter a Rattata. Phew, crisis averted. Duke's Claws is a thing, and I am thankful for it. We spend an outrageous $500 on a Magikarp, and feel the power begin to well up from within. Nothing particularly interesting happens in Mount Moon either. We see Team Rocket for the first time, and honestly, this is where we get to see how much better some of the sprites are between Red and Yellow. Grimer and Coughing look much better here than they do in the previous versions. We also meet Jesse and James here. That's right, they actually appear in this game as kind of mini-bosses, with their anime team of Coughing, Ekans, and Meowth. Very cool. Then they blast off at the speed of light. We catch a Sandshrew in Mount Moon who won't help us against Misty at all, and we also catch a Spearow who also won't help us. But we do evolve Gary into Gyarados, and with that will help us a ton. We also cram Pikachu full of all the potions we can to get its friendship maxed out, so we can pick up Bulbasaur named Goot in Cerulean City. Despite not being available as starters, all 3 of the starter Pokemon can be found early in this game, which is pretty cool. Misty's team is almost completely unchanged from Red and Blue, despite the game supposed to be a bit closer to the anime. The only change is that her Starmie now knows Harden, and her AI has a chance to click Bubble Beam against Pokemon that resist it, since it's stronger than Tackle. Gen 1 Tangent number 5. AI in Gen 1 is very limited. There are some hard-coded cases, such as Brock always using a full heal if his Pokemon are statist, but it can be broadly split up into 3 groups: Wild Pokemon AI, Normal Trainer AI, and Smart Trainer AI. While Pokemon use moves at random, normal trainers use moves at random but will not use status-inducing moves against an already status Pokemon, such as using Hypnosis against a sleeping Pokemon, and smart trainers will prioritize using super effective moves and deprioritize not very effective moves. This leads to some funny moments such as Lance's Dragonite spamming Barrier and Agility because they're psychic types and thus super effective against poison and fighting types. Pokemon Yellow AI leans a bit more into the randomness to make fights a little more challenging and a little less predictable. At least, that's what it seems like. I'm not sure on the specifics and it was kinda hard to find exactly how it works. If someone could let me know in the comments, that would be amazing. Between Groot and Gary, we have little problem beating Misty's water types. We even let Yella get his moment in against the Staryu. Good job, little buddy. Gen 1 tangent number 6. Pokemon Yellow for the Game Boy has more voice acting in it than Scarlet and Violet for the Switch. I'd just like to point that out. Getting voice lines onto a tiny Game Boy cartridge was a massive struggle for the team, and it's compressed to heck, but Pikachu's little voice lines when you talk to him add so much charm to the game, and I'm so happy they're in there. We have our rematch against Butts, and he proves completely ill-prepared for the monster that is Gary the Gyarados. I wonder if that will change. We asked to join Team Rocket and are promptly denied, so we beat up the Rocket Grunt and steal his gold. Then we say hi to the Charmander we won't get because we're getting our Route 24 encounter, a Bellsprout named Ding Dong. Right, another grass poison type. Wonder if we can— and there's an Oddish, and then we have the set. Woo. Pikachu is absolutely flabbergasted by the strange talking Pokemon in Bill's house. But wait, it is Bill! Gasp! Shock Pikachu face, but real! We asked to see his Pokemon collection, but he refuses, so we beat him up and take his fancy yacht party ticket. We have to take a few detours before fighting the third gym. Of course, we catch a Diglett called Mike, also an Abra called Abba, and a Drowsy called Schnoz. Gary gives Butts a good butt kicking on the SSN, and we give the captain a back massage to get the HM for the cut. After that, it's time for Base Surge. Before that though, we show off a little glitch, which is the reason why this gym puzzle is so aggravating in the first generation. Yeah. Left-Hander Surge is the first boss with a radically different team from Red and Blue. He now only has one Pokemon, a level 28 Raichu, boasting Thunderbolt, Mega Punch, and Mega Kick. By hardcore Nuzlocke rules, the level cap should be 28, but that's too easy, so I randomly picked out a level cap of 25 to roll with to make things a bit more fun. Ultimately, this battle wasn't too hard. I had 3 grass types and 2 ground types, so after paralyzing the Raichu, I used Sandslash's Dig to pulverize it. Dig having 100 base power and being available before the second gym is crazy. Our reward is the TM for Thunderbolt, and can I say it's awesome to be given powerful options like this early in the game? Between 100 base power Dig, Thunderbolt, and Body Slam, as well as Pokemon like Gyarados and Nidoking, it rules to have these little spikes of power to keep things interesting. With the third badge, we're also given a Squirtle for our trouble, which we call Pump. And with access to Cut, we're able to get through Rock Tunnel. For some reason, in Gen 1, there are no items at all in Rock Tunnel. We do catch a Geodude called Mega Man, adding it to the Magnemite, which we call Knight. In Lavender Town, I'm excited to catch Ghastly, but we do need a Silph Scope to do that, so not much for us in this graveyard town before moving on. Tangent number 6. While you need the Silph Scope to catch Ghastly, you don't need it to clear Pokemon Tower. Using a Pokédoll on the Marowak Ghost causes the fight to be won, allowing you to get to the top floor and get the Poké Flute from Mr. Fuji. Nothing much happens until Celadon City, where a bunch of stuff opens up to us. First, we can get a ton of cool TMs, including Ice Beam and Rock Slide. We can get the HM for Fly, which we teach to Jabby, and use it to absolutely crush Erica, who has an altered team from Red and Blue, and I think for the worse. In Red and Blue, Erica has a fully evolved team of Victory Bell, Tangela, and Vileplume, and she's still pretty easy to beat. But in Yellow, she has Weeping Bell and Gloom, alongside Tangela. At least the Tangela has Mega Drain now, I suppose. The last thing to do is to crash Team Rocket's hideout under the game corner. Armed with Bubble Beam, Gary obliterates Jesse and James again, then Giovanni, who now has a Persian on his team instead of the Kangaskhan, and we get the Silph Scope, so we can finally get ourselves a Ghastly named Spookums. I really like that Giovanni has a Persian now. I think that is just so fitting. Obviously it's taken from the anime. It just absolutely matches his mob boss persona. It was a great idea for the anime, and it's a great idea for Yellow to adapt it. I really wish Fire Red and Leaf Green had taken some of these changes on board. We beat our rival yet again, and it's at this point his team starts to diverge. You see, Red and Blue used starter selection as something of a difficulty mode, with Squirtle being easy mode and Charmander being hard mode. Not an exact science, more so an approximation. But Yellow takes it a bit more seriously by using a somewhat adaptive team for the rival. Depending on how well you do against your rival in the first 2 fights, you will have different teams going forward. If you win the lab and route 23 fights, you will have a Jolteon team with Cloyster and Ninetales. If you win the lab but lose or don't fight on route 23, you will have a Flareon with Cloyster and Magneton. And if you lose both, you will have Vaporeon, Ninetales, and Magneton. Subtle adaptive difficulty like this is difficult to do, so even if it's far from perfect, I still admire the attempt. We end up with the Flareon team, of course. Moving on, we help the Marowak pass on to the afterlife by giving it a new doll. Then, on the top floor, the 3 Rocket Goons are replaced by Jesse and James, so it's a nicer time as we send them packing and get the Poké Flute, letting us go to Fuchsia. Of course, doing that means battling a Snorlax, which means an opportunity to catch one of the absolute best Pokemon in the game. Snorlax is pure normal typing, enormous move pool, and fantastic attack and HP, all make it a Pokemon with unrivaled versatility and power, even if its special defense is not as high in this game as it will be in later ones. So if we can catch one, we should. We start with the one west of Cerulean, and we attempt to use Spookums to our advantage. Snorlax only learns normal moves through level ups, so Spookums is at no danger of dying. We don't even have to worry about Struggle, since not only is Struggle a normal type move in Gen 1, rather than typeless, but the game doesn't even keep track of the opponent's BP, so the opponent will never use Struggle. My plan here is to abuse the mechanic of Great Balls. As we all know, statusing a Pokemon makes it easier to catch, but Gen 1 uses an extremely convoluted formula to determine catch rate. The most important part is this: when a Pokemon is asleep or frozen, a Great Ball has a 25% chance to catch at base, before factoring in catch rate and HP and things like that. So with 15 Great Balls and a Haunted with Hypnosis, should be pretty free, right? Well, that's what I thought, but I decided to do some research while writing this script, and I just misremembered this. The chances of catching a sleeping Pokemon with a Great Ball are actually 14.52%. But even so, with 15 balls, the chance of me failing to catch one are just 9.5%, which is exactly what happened. A few Hail Mary Pokeballs later, and I was just out of Pokeballs, so I sent Nuzlocking packing out of frustration, and decided to get the second one. There are only 2 Snorlaxes in the entire game, so I decided to be more safe and stock up on Ultra Balls this time. Ultra Balls are the best way to catch Pokemon that you intend to status, so keep that in mind next time you play Gen 1. Great Balls work better against Pokemon you are primarily going to damage. Things seemed dire at first, but eventually after 4 Nightshades, all fixed damage moves ignore type immunity in Gen 1, and a Hypnosis, we finally got the big guy in the ball. We call him Rob Boss and head down to Fuchsia, picking up a Doduo called Doobird along the way. In the Safari Zone, we capture a Dratini called Temmo, and we also get the HMs for Surf and Strength, so now we can explore all of Kanto. Well, after beating Koga. There aren't any new Pokemon I'm dying to get my hands on, so let's look at the remaining gym leaders I can fight. Koga is the leader of Fuchsia Gym. His team is headlined by a level 50 Venomoth, an absolutely massive jump from his level 43 Weezing in Red and Blue, but the rest of his team is all Venonats. Here we can see one of the most direct upgrades from Red and Blue to Yellow, as all his Pokemon have custom movesets. In Red and Blue, even boss trainers had only level up moves, with only gym leaders, Elite Four, and the Champion having one unique move on their strongest Pokemon. In Yellow, every boss from Koga onwards has a handcrafted moveset. Not perfect movesets, but they are so much better than Red and Blue. Funnily enough, Sabrina also has a level cap of 50. Much like Koga, her movesets are upgraded, but the Pokemon themselves are much more disappointing. In my mind, a Gen 1 Psychic Gym should be showing off more of the dual types, like Exeggutor, or Starmie, or Jinx, but Sabrina in Yellow has only Abra, Kadabra, and Alakazam. Her Abra doesn't even have an attacking move, it only knows Flash, which in some ways is hilarious, and even kind of clever as it stops players trying to set up on it. Blaine has a higher level than Koga and Sabrina, but the Poison and Psychic Gym Leaders have the same level cap, which is interesting. So the first thing we do is unlock Sabrina's gym by clearing Silph-Co. Despite both Koga's and Sabrina's high levels, Silph-Co Giovanni has much lower leveled Pokemon. We can also get some good practice against our rival, whose team is starting to take better shape. This is also a great time to talk about one of the many quirks of the AI. If you follow Nuzlocke of any game after Gen 1, you're probably familiar with the strategy of AI manipulation, getting the AI to use a specific move, so you can easily switch in a Pokemon that resists the move. For example, send in a Gyarados to bait an electric attack, then switch into a ground type to take it. This matters because of Buck's Cloyster, which has a Bubble Beam and Aurora Beam. so in theory, I can bait Bubble Beam to get a grass type in safely, then KO it. But the quirk is this: the AI only decides what move it's going to use as it uses it, with the exception of Quick Attack, the game's only positive priority attack. And even then, all it does is increase the priority of whatever move the game decides to use. This is why whenever an opponent uses an item or switches a Pokemon, you can outspeed it and attack before it, because the AI hasn't decided it's going to use the item yet. It also has a ton of other fun glitches, like using items during the trapping turns of Fire Spin or the invulnerable turn of Dig. That has happened to me before, fortunately not this time though. But it also means that if you switch, the AI will choose its move based not on what was there before, like, every other instance, but on what you switch in. So if I switch in a Grass type against Cloyster, the AI will most likely select Aurora Beam. And you thought fighting games are the only input reading AI? Even with all this, Gary proves once again that he's not messing around, especially with his new access to Surf. We pick up the lap press that we call Sally, proceed to absolutely dunk on Giovanni thanks to Spookums, who's immune to all of Giovanni's Pokemon except his Nidorino's Poison Sting, which it, double resists. I decide to take on Koga's gym first, since I figure it will be easier. Indeed it is, as Aber, the all-new Alakazam, sweeps through with ease. So, onto Sabrina, and we'll need a slightly more complicated strategy. I use Dewbird, now a Dodrio, to beat Aber and Kadabra with Draw Peck, but Alakazam will need a sturdier check, due to it being able to outspeed Dewbird and threaten to one-shot it with its nearly 25% critical hit chance. But we have a secret weapon. The Schnoz the Hypno, who's able to showcase the true weakness of the Psychic type, itself. As I said before, the number one problem with the Psychic type is how easy it is for other Psychic types to check them. Hypno does a great job of checking Alakazam, as despite its lower speed and special, it gains access to a very strange move in Meditate, allowing it to boost its attack to break through Alakazam. We also boost our speed, thanks to the Soul Badge. Wait, what? In the first 3 generations of Pokemon, getting certain gym badges will apply a passive bonus to a particular stat of all your Pokemon. In Gen 1, this boost is 12.5%. Brock's badge gives you plus attack, Surge's badge gives plus speed, Koga's gives plus defense, and Lane's gives plus special. But of course there's a bug. Whenever you raise or lower your stats through a status move, the function that calculates what your stats should be is, well, very, very broken. In this case, the badge boost for stats other than what you raise will be reapplied. So when Dushnage uses Meditate, not only does its attack raise, but also its defense and speed will raise by 12.5% each time. This stacks hard and turns the silly Nightmare Fuel Pokemon into an actual monster. Gen 1 tangent number 7. This isn't the only glitch from the stat calculator. If you use Agility while paralyzed, or Swords Dance, or any other attack boosting move while burned, the stat drops associated with these status will be temporarily ignored, allowing you to jump from quarter of speed to double speed as though you weren't paralyzed. But there's actually a function to reapply the stat drops to your opponent. If you raise your stats while your opponent is paralyzed or burned, you will reapply the stat drops caused by those statuses. This is actually a crucial part of Slowbro's game plan in competitive singles, who uses Thunder Wave, then Amnesia to reapply the paralysis speed drop, meaning that it can outspeed even fast Pokemon like Alakazam even when paralyzed. So, a few headbutts later, and Sabrina is defeated, netting us the 6th gym badge and setting us on the path to the endgame. Blaine and Giovanni are historically pretty easy, so I'm not too worried. Let's start with Blaine, who has, in my opinion, a much better team than he did in Red and Blue. He got rid of the uninvolved Growlithe and Ponyta and replaced them with a Ninetales, which makes his team smaller but with each member being more valuable. Shame there's no Magmar really to round out his team, or even Charizard. But hey, we'll take what we can get. Either way, Gary absolutely crushes the team, unlocking the final gym for us. In Red and Blue, Giovanni is pitifully easy. Aside from normal moves, his only attacks are Dugtrio's Dig, and the Nido's Poison Sting. His Rhydon does no Fissure, but in Gen 1, OHK moves fail if the target is faster than you, and Rhydon is very slow. So imagine my shock when I saw Giovanni's team has been given some great changes. He now leads with his Dugtrio, which has Earthquake. He replaced the out-of-place Rhyhorn with his signature Persian. His Rhydon is much more threatening with Earthquake and Rock Slide, and both his Nidos now have Thunder, which, while it's not a great move, especially in Gen 1 where Thunder only has a 10% paralysis chance. Remember, this is the same gen where Blizzard had a 1 in 3 chance to freeze in its first iteration. Gen 1 balancing is something else. But either way, even with only a 10% chance to paralyze and a 70 accuracy, it's still a scary move. Fortunately, the level cap is now at 55, which is bigger than 50 in Red and Blue, which means we can add Timbo to the team and make them a Dragonite. I am quite worried about Nido's Thunder, especially in conjunction with Earthquake, which they both know. This means that Gary isn't going to be as effective as I'd like, especially since, as I said before, the AO will always tag him with a Thunder every time he switches in. I can easily beat Dugtrio with any flying type as it only knows ground attacks. I have Spookums for Persian, which only knows normal moves, and I can handle Brydon with Pump, who's now a Blastoise. I just need to potentially dance around the Nidos and hope Timbo can deal with them. All goes well with the plan until Nidoqueen comes out. I send in Timbo against the Thunder, which barely does any damage. Not even a quarter. Dragonite's just a bit of a monster, I guess. A couple of surfs later, and Timbo has KO'd both Nidos as well as the Rhydon at the back, and with that, all 8 badges are required. Before moving on to the Elite Four, we have a pretty tough rival battle, who now has a full team of 6 Pokemon, those being Sandslash, Magneton, Cloyster, Execute, Alakazam, and Flareon. With Timbo now being joined by Sarah, the Thunderbolting Lapras, as well as Mike, Dewbird, and Rob Boss, this isn't a tough fight, but I know it will be tougher later. This is just a taster. After an uneventful victory road with 0 mandatory battles, it's time to build our team for the Elite Four. We have Lorelei, the Ice Trainer, Bruno, the Fighting Trainer, Agatha, the Ghost Trainer, more of a Poison Trainer, and Lance, the Dragon Trainer, and then of course the champion, Barnes. I settle with a team of Timbo the Dragonite, Sarah the Lapras, Abba the Alakazam, Rob Boss the Snorlax, Deschnoz the Hypno, and newcomer Mega Man the Golem. Each of these Pokemon have key roles to play, and I'll explain as we go. Lorelei is, strangely, the scariest of the Elite Four despite her lower levels. Ice is a fantastic type in Gen 1, one of the best in the game. There are no steel types, and fire doesn't resist ice, so there are only 2 types that resist ice, water and itself. Ice is also surprisingly strong defensively too, which may come as a shock, but if you think about it in the context of Gen 1, it makes sense. It only has 3 weaknesses, to Fighting, Fire, and Rock. Fighting moves are terrible, and their moves are terrible. Fire types aren't much better without steel types to prey upon. And while Rock Slide is okay, it's just okay. It's a more than manageable weakness. It may only have 1 resistance in Ice, but not only is that a great resistance to have, but it also comes with an immunity to Freeze, which most Ice attacks can cause. And in Gen 1, you have no natural chance to Thaw, which admittedly only makes it slightly scarier than Freeze in every other generation. Tangent number 8. Types in Gen 1 don't actually have innate resistance to status, with the sole exception of Poison types being immune to the Poison status. Instead, the game simply checks if an attack is the same type as the target, and if it is, ignore any secondary effects that could cause status. This works great for Fire and Ice types, since the only moves that can cause Freeze and Burn are attacking. The problem comes with moves that can cause status that otherwise should affect that type. For example, Electric types can be paralyzed by Thunder Wave, Sunspore, and Glare, but they cannot be paralyzed by Thunderbolt or similar moves. Perhaps more curiously, Body Slam cannot paralyze normal types. Also, Lick can't paralyze ghost types, but that's a pretty niche interaction. Lorelei has a decently strong team of fully evolved Pokemon with some real boss monsters in there. She leads with Dugong, which isn't all that strong, but it is unique, as it has custom AI, which causes it to ignore type advantage 40% of the time. This is because it knows the psychic move Rest, and as we discussed before, this means it will endlessly spam the move against fighting and poison types, potentially leading to a soft lock. The rest of her team features a Cloyster, a Slowbro that is vastly upgraded over a Red and Blue team with Surf and Psychic in addition to Amnesia and Withdraw, a Jinx with crazy attacking power, and the big, bulky Lapras. However, for all this power, 1 Sarah equipped with Thunderbolt is all that is needed to crush her team risk-free. Bruno is next, and though his move pools are much upgraded, his team is still terrible. He has 2 Onyxes, which really are the weakest fully evolved Pokemon in the entire game, apart from Ditto, I guess. The Hitmons are pretty sad too, as they lack the excellent special defense and strong coverage options that later gens give them. And while Machamp has a high attack, it gets no good fighting moves and pretty lacking bulk too. Without any issue, Abba cleans them out with 1 Psychic piece. Agatha also had an upgrade. Her Red and Blue team was quite silly, with her Ace Gengar having Dream Eater but no Hypnosis, instead using Toxic. Now there's more synergy, and a few better coverage options like Mega Drain and Psychic. You may not laugh at Mega Drain, but without it, Gengar struggles to beat Rhydon and Golem. Either way, none of her poison types are any match for Aber. Finally, we have Lance, who has perhaps the biggest glow-up of all. Gone is the terrible Dragonair and Dragonite sets, and we have all new ones with Bubble Beam, Ice Beam, and Thunderbolt. To cap it all off is his Dragonite, which packs Thunder, Fire Blast, Blizzard, and Hyper Beam. This is the first fight where I'll need to coordinate my attacks, and it might not end well. Sarah eats a painful Hyper Beam from Gyarados, but takes it down in return with Thunderbolt. In comes the first Dragonair, and this one knows Thunder Wave, Thunderbolt, Hyper Beam, and Slam. This is why we have Mega Man. He comes in and fears nothing at all, KOing back with Earthquake. Dragonair number 2 replaces Thunder Wave and Thunderbolt with Bubble Beam and Ice Beam, so Sarah comes back in to take the KO with Ice Beam. Sarah is getting quite low on HP, so I'm very worried that Dragonite's Thunder will KO her outright. Aerodactyl comes in, but with all normal flying moves, it's crushed by Mega Man's Rock Slides. So now, the big dynamite. This is the entire reason Rob Boss is here. His bulk and access to Ice Beam are super clutch here. So I send him in, and he takes a lot more damage from Blizzard than I would have liked. He tanks the Thunder and lands Ice Beam for about 70%, but I know Rob Boss is dead on the next hit. Just like I was at the beginning, back at Brock, I have to make a choice. Aber can come in on any special attack, and if he doesn't get status, can retaliate with a Psychic for what I can do to a Hyper Beam, or gets paralyzed or frozen. He could die right then and there. But this time, I'm not playing this. I didn't come this far just to make more sacrifices. I make the switch, and watch as Thunder connects, dealing minimal damage and failing to paralyze. I thank the stars that for some reason in Gen 1 Thunder only has a 10% paralysis chance, then take the KO against D-Knight with Psychic. I'm through to Butts with my team fully intact. I designed my team with this fight in mind, but that doesn't mean it isn't at least a little scary. Butts has some decently powerful Pokemon and decent move pools, which is quite a bit more than the terrible champion of Red Blue, who has a few Pokemon with only normal attack. Now, I don't want to overhype this fight, but I would like to beat it with 0 death. That's my challenge, and I want to see it through. So with the healing done, I steel myself and head in. First up is Sand Slash. With Earthquake and Slash in its arsenal, very few Pokemon can comfortably take a hit from it. Best we can do is lead with Timbo and try to KO it with Blizzard before it can deal too much damage. We miss the first Blizzard, and the second one fails to KO in one hit, so we've already taken a lot of damage on our star member from just the first mob. Next up is Alakazam, and we know how this story goes. With only Psychic moves, the Schnoz is free to come in and do its finest job, but now with upgraded Body Slams to get the job done faster. Who would have thought that with only one Body Slam TM in the entire game, we'd use it on Hypno of all things. With a few Meditates under our belt, the Schnoz is also able to eliminate Exeggutor with a few more.
Magneton comes in next, which Mega Man easily counters and KOs with Earthquake. Next up is Cloyster, and if you remember Lorelei, you know that Sarah can't be frozen and wins with Thunderbolt. Finally, Flareon comes out, But's strongest Pokemon, the strongest trainer Pokemon in the entire game. Whether we go Deathless depends on if Sarah can dodge one more crit. And we do it. With just a couple more serves, we've defeated the Elite Four, Deathless.
And with that, our Pokemon Yellow Nuzlocke is complete. Sadly, this was not a Deathless run due to, of all things, Pidge the Nidoran dying to Brock's Onix's Bide right at the beginning of the game. Funny how a game of Pokemon can work out sometimes, eh? So, is Pokemon Yellow all that better than Red and Blue? Absolutely it is, as long as you don't mind putting in a little extra effort against Brock. There are definitely some things I prefer against Red and Blue. I think the sprites are just more charming, and some of the early game bosses like Surge and Erica are more interesting. But the late game bosses, from Blaine onwards especially, are significantly better, with slightly better teams and, more importantly, movesets that aren't completely horrible. Yes, Thunder Nidoking is a bit silly, but it's significantly better than a Nidoking with only Poison Sting and Horn Attack. The quote-unquote adaptive difficulty is a nice touch too, though much like any Pokemon game, it's really as hard as you want it to be. Overall, I think if you're going to play a Gen 1 game, or even a Kanto game in general, I find Yellow to be the definitive experience. Maybe that will change as I revisit the GBA or Let's Go remakes, but right now, I'd highly recommend it, warts and all.
Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. This took so long to make, like actual months. I have over 300 drawings and so much footage. So I would really appreciate if you could, do all the usual like, comment, subscribing. Also, I stream this attempt all on Twitch, and sometimes I still stream that, so check me out there and on my Twitter page too. I promise the next video won't take nearly as long. I actually have a plan for how I'm going to, not have to draw 300 pictures going forward. So, thank you so much, and just have a good day.